Most people think blackouts are a few hours, maybe a weekend inconvenience. But here's the truth. Real outages stretch on, and when they do, it's not just the lights you lose. Think about Texas back in 2021. Whole neighborhoods froze, hospitals buckled, families melted snow just to drink water. That was just a few days. Now imagine months. Here's the problem. The average emergency kit only plans for 3 days. 3 days of canned soup, a flashlight, and maybe a power bank. That won't cut it when you're staring down 72 days of dead silence, freezing nights, and zero outside help. You need a system that doesn't just patch you through the weekend. You need solutions that can actually stretch into months without breaking you down. And that's exactly what we're going to cover. Real strategies that keep your house warm, your nights lit, and your family alive. Because when the grid fails, it's not day 1 that gets you, it's week 6. When your fuel is gone, your candles burn out, and your hope starts running low. Let's make sure you never reach that point. Core strategy: when the grid collapses, most people panic about light and heat, but here's the truth. If you don't get the basics of safety right first, you won't live long enough to enjoy either one. The number one killer in blackouts isn't even the cold. It's carbon monoxide poisoning. Silent, invisible, and completely unforgiving. Families have survived freezing nights only to be found dead the next morning because they lit a charcoal grill inside or ran a propane heater without airflow. So rule number 1, ventilation before comfort. Crack a window, keep an airflow path, and treat every combustion source as a double-edged sword. Heat is survival, but only if you live to feel it. Now, once you've locked down the safety side, your next focus is conservation. Forget about keeping your entire house at a cozy 70 degrees. It's not happening. That's a suburban fantasy. In survival, you think in terms of heat zones, not entire homes. Pick 1 or 2 spaces, preferably the smallest, most insulated rooms, and turn them into your fortress against the cold. Blankets on the walls, rugs on the floor, towels shoved under doors. It's not pretty, but it traps every ounce of warmth you can generate. Next comes the question of light. The darkness of a true blackout isn't just inconvenient, it's psychologically crushing. No glowing street lamps outside, no faint hum of electronics, nothing but silence and black. That eats at your mind after a few nights, which means your strategy should never be light everything up. That wastes precious fuel and batteries. Instead, you want light zones, which are concentrated, controlled areas of illumination. Think of it like building a campfire inside your house. A lantern on a table where the family gathers, headlamps for moving, maybe glow sticks to mark pathways. You don't need Broadway, just enough visibility to function and enough glow to calm the human brain that craves light in the dark. This dual zone strategy, also known as heat zones and light zones, is how you stretch your resources to last. A kerosene heater burning low in a sealed-off room will keep you alive for weeks, not days, if you're not wasting energy trying to heat empty space. A few candles in mason jars can create warmth, light, and even cook a tiny meal, but only if you discipline yourself to focus where it matters most. And here's the mental shift most people miss. In a long-term blackout, you're not recreating modern comfort, you're managing survival discomfort. Once you accept that, you stop wasting energy and start thinking like a prepper who can outlast the grid. Alternative heat sources that actually last. When the grid's gone, you quickly learn that just throwing on a blanket won't cut it for 72 days. The real question is, what heat source can I trust to last and not kill me in the process? Let's break down the survival-grade options that actually work, even when the lights stay off for months. Let's start with the king of off-grid heat. Wood-burning stoves and their scrappy cousin, the rocket mass heater. If you're lucky enough to own a cabin, a rural home, or even just have a space where a small stove can be installed, this is your best friend. A standard wood stove does more than throw off flames. It radiates steady heat that keeps warming the room long after the fire dies down. But here's the upgrade. A rocket mass heater. This design takes small sticks, burns them efficiently, and channels the heat into a massive thermal mass like bricks or cob. That thermal battery keeps releasing warmth for hours, sometimes days after the fire's out. Translation? Less wood, more comfort. It's like turning your fireplace into a slow-release heat pill for your home. But let's be real, not everyone has a stove sitting around. That's where low-cost, DIY solutions shine. Enter the humble candle heater. And no, I don't mean just lighting tea lights and hoping for the best. I mean hacking your supplies into something that traps and magnifies heat. A terracotta pot placed upside down over a cluster of candles can radiate warmth like a mini stove. People have survived whole winters in drafty apartments using this trick. And if you've stocked up on something like Crisco, Vaseline, or even butter in an emergency, you've got instant candle fuel. One big tub of Crisco can burn for up to 40 days straight. The flame is small, but in a sealed room, it's enough to make the difference between teeth-chattering misery and livable warmth. Now let's talk about a middle ground: kerosene and catalytic heaters. These are old-school tools that deserve respect. In fact, many rural families still keep kerosene heaters around for exactly this reason. They work when nothing else does. With proper ventilation, they can heat a small house, and they run on fuel that's relatively cheap and storable. The catalytic models especially burn cleaner and give off steady heat without smoke. But here's the warning: fuel storage is both your friend and your enemy. If you prep ahead with a few sealed gallons of kerosene, you're set for weeks. If you don't, you'll be left trying to buy fuel when everyone else has already panic bought it off the shelves. And you don't want to be that guy standing in a freezing gas line during a blackout. But here's where the real survival mindset kicks in. Heat isn't just about fire, it's about holding on to it. The best preppers don't just ask, "What can I burn?" They ask, "How do I trap every calorie of heat my body and my tools generate?" That's where smart layering and insulation hacks become lifesavers. Close off unused rooms. Create a microclimate by sleeping in tents or canopies inside your home. Pile blankets on the floor and walls, not just over yourself, because every inch of insulation counts. Even something as simple as lining a room with heavy drapes, bubble wrap, or aluminum foil can reflect body heat back towards you instead of letting it leak into the walls. And don't underestimate thermal mass. A bucket of rocks, a stack of bricks, even jugs of water, if you place them near your heat source, they'll absorb energy and then radiate it back for hours after the flame dies. It's like storing heat in a battery that doesn't need charging. This trick turns a 2-hour burn into an all-night survival comfort. Here's another thing about heat during a long blackout. Most people think it's all about making a fire, but the truth is, the real trick is making small amounts of heat last. You don't have the luxury of wasting fuel when you don't know how long the outage will run. So instead of asking, "How can I get warm right now?" the smarter prepper asks, "How do I stay warm tomorrow and the day after that without running out of options?" One of the most clever solutions is using improvised thermal batteries. Forget roaring fires, think of stones, bricks, or water jugs as slow-release heaters. Heat them once with whatever small flame you have, then tuck them under blankets or in your living zone. They radiate warmth for hours, letting you stretch your fuel far beyond what you'd expect. It's a simple physics hack, but it's the kind of trick that turns scraps of warmth into survival comfort. Now let's talk about long-burn fuels people forget. Shortening cans are good, yes, but so are wax-soaked cardboard rolls in tin cans. They're basically homemade buddy burners, and one roll can heat water or provide steady warmth for hours. They're safe to store, cheap to make, and perfect for when you've already burned through more expensive fuel options. It's about stacking layers of backups, so when one option runs out, another keeps you covered. Another thing to note here is that when the grid is gone, the best heat source is the one you don't have to constantly feed. And that's where passive design hacks come in. The small changes that don't burn fuel, don't cost much, but make a massive difference in how warm your space feels. First, let's talk about sunlight. It's free and abundant if you use it right. During the day, open your curtains wide and let every ounce of sunlight stream in. Even weak winter sun has infrared energy that can warm up walls, floors, and furniture. But here's the key. Once the sun sets, that heat starts escaping. This is where thermal drapes or even thick blankets become your best friend. As soon as night hits, cover those windows. It's the same principle as putting a lid on a pot. You're trapping the heat inside instead of letting it leak out into the cold night air. Now, drafts are your silent enemy. A single gap under a door can bleed out more warmth than you'd believe. That's why sealing leaks is non-negotiable. You don't need fancy insulation, towels, duct tape, bubble wrap, or even rolled-up clothing can block drafts under doors and around windows. Some preppers even use chimney balloons, simple inflatable plugs that stop warm air from rushing out of unused fireplaces. Think of your home as a balloon itself. The goal is to keep the air from leaking. But here's a hack most people forget. Your ceiling fan has a reverse switch. Flip it in winter, and instead of blowing air downward, it gently circulates the rising warm air back down along the walls. This evens out your room temperature and prevents wasted warmth from pooling near the ceiling. It's a zero-cost move that transforms how effectively your limited heat actually spreads. What's brilliant about these passive tricks is that they don't burn through resources. You're not consuming kerosene, propane, or even wood. You're just making smarter use of what you already have. And in a 72-day blackout, that difference is massive. Think less about fighting the cold and more about outsmarting it. Because if you can keep your space sealed, sun-warmed, and draft-proof, you've already won half the battle before striking a single match. Now here's the big takeaway. No single heat source will carry you through 72 days alone. Your wood stove might need more fuel than you expected. Your kerosene might run dry. Your candle supply might burn out. But layering strategies like combining DIY heaters, stored fuel, and insulation hacks creates redundancy. Redundancy is survival. You don't rely on one bullet in your prepper arsenal, so don't rely on one heater either. Remember, the goal isn't to recreate modern comfort, it's to stay alive long enough to see the lights come back on. Efficient fire, smart hacks, and thermal tricks will get you there. But only if you think ahead, stock up, and train yourself to use less, waste nothing, and stretch everything. Lighting that doesn't panic you, light, on the other hand, is less about survival physics and more about survival psychology. Darkness for one night? Fine. Darkness for 72 days? That's when morale cracks. The good news is you don't need blazing brightness to keep sanity, you just need steady, predictable light you can rely on. But here's the thing most people don't realize. When the power's out for more than a couple of hours, darkness becomes your second enemy. Not just because you can't see, but because your brain starts to panic. Our bodies are hardwired to link pitch black nights with danger. So if you're planning for a 72-day blackout, your lighting setup has to do more than help you find the bathroom at 3 a.m. It has to keep your morale stable, your tasks manageable, and your home safe from fire hazards. Let's start with the obvious tools, headlamps, and kerosene lanterns. These are fantastic, but they're not meant for 24/7 use. Headlamps are like precision tools. You put them on when you need your hands free to cook, repair something, or check on the perimeter. But if you're wearing one constantly, you'll drain batteries faster than you expect. Plus, blinding your family every time you look up isn't exactly morale boosting. Use them with intention, not as your household's main light source. Kerosene lanterns, on the other hand, are old-school classics. They give off a warm glow, they double as a mild heat source, and they're reliable as long as you've prepped enough fuel. The problem? Ventilation. Just like with heaters, burning kerosene in an enclosed space without airflow is a recipe for headaches or worse. That's why smart preppers treat kerosene lanterns as special occasion lighting. Bring them out when you need widespread illumination for a short window, like dinner time or family regrouping. Then blow them out and save your fuel. Now let's get into the modern survival upgrades. Solar and battery-powered lanterns. These are your bread and butter in a long outage. The technology has come a long way. A good solar lantern can charge during the day and give you 8 to 12 hours of soft, usable light at night. The key is placement. Don't leave them randomly on tables, set up light zones. For example, hang one in your dining area so meals feel normal. Place another in your main sleeping zone for ambient light that doesn't fry your retinas. And use low-drain bulbs whenever possible. The difference between high and low settings could add days to your battery life. And here's a pro tip. Rotate your charging strategy. If you've got multiple solar lanterns or power banks, never let them all run out at once. Always have one or two charging while the others are in use. That way, you're not left in the lurch if you hit a stretch of cloudy weather or forget to put your panels out. It's all about rhythm. Use, charge, rotate. But what if you're caught with limited supplies? That's where DIY survival lighting comes in. Believe it or not, you can make oil candles with something as basic as Crisco, olive oil, or even bacon grease. A cotton wick stuck into a jar of Crisco can burn for days, yes, days, while also giving off a surprising amount of light. These DIY setups aren't glamorous, but they're reliable. Plus, they double as tiny heat sources in small rooms. And unlike kerosene lanterns, the smell of burning oil or Crisco is a lot less intrusive than you'd expect. It's the difference between survival mode and living in a smokehouse. Another one of the smartest, most overlooked methods is wick-fed oil lamps made from kitchen scraps. Olive oil, canola, even leftover bacon grease, all of these can power a tiny wick stuck in a jar. It's not glamorous, but it's low smoke, safer than kerosene in tight spaces, and endlessly renewable as long as you've got cooking fats left. Preppers often forget that light doesn't need to be store-bought. It can literally come from the drippings in your pan. Another game changer is using reflectors to amplify whatever light you do have. Place a lantern or candle in front of a foil-lined surface, a mirror, or even a white-painted wall, and suddenly one small flame lights up half a room. It's free, it doubles your efficiency, and it keeps you from burning through twice the candles. For real longevity, solar garden lights are gold. Most people use them outdoors, but during a blackout, you bring them inside at night, recharge them in the day, and repeat. They're cheap, rechargeable, forever, and versatile enough to scatter across rooms or hallways. No batteries wasted, no kerosene fumes, just free light cycling with the sun. Here's another mindset shift. Lighting doesn't have to mean bright. In fact, in a survival situation, too much light can be dangerous. If the grid is down and your house is glowing like Times Square, you've just painted a target on yourself. Darkness outside plus light inside equals this family still has power. They must have supplies, and desperate people will come knocking. That's why preppers often use blackout curtains or even heavy blankets to cover windows. You're not just lighting your home, you're managing visibility and security. Now, let's connect lighting with mental survival. Humans aren't built to thrive in total darkness. A dim lantern during dinner can feel like civilization is still alive. A small glow in your sleeping area helps kids feel safe. Even for adults, those little pools of light break up the crushing isolation of a dark house. It's not just about seeing where you're walking, it's about keeping your mind steady enough to keep going. And don't forget task lighting versus ambient lighting. Task
Waterproof
lighting
integrity
is
down to
direct.
1 meter for
A
up to
headlamp
30
for
minutes.
cooking,
At
a
close
lantern
range, the
for
wide
sewing,
beams
a
simulate normal
flashlight
daylight
for reading.
conditions.
Ambient lighting is indirect, placing a solar lantern behind a jug of water to diffuse the glow, turning a harsh LED into a soft lamp. That little trick, also known as water diffusion, can make a cold, sterile light feel cozy, and it costs nothing. At the end of the day, your lighting plan should work like this. Headlamps and flashlights for emergencies or focused kerosene lanterns and oil candles for short bursts of warmth and glow. Solar lanterns and battery-powered LEDs for steady, daily use. And insulation tricks like water jugs or blankets to keep that light safe, subtle, and morale-boosting. Because in a 72-day blackout, fire isn't your biggest risk. Panic is. And the right kind of light, the kind that lasts, the kind that doesn't scream, "We have supplies," and the kind that keeps spirits up, is one of the most powerful survival tools you can prepare today. Together, these heat and light strategies aren't about comfort, they're about control. They stretch what little you have into something that carries you past days, into weeks, into months. Real-world lessons and Reddit hacks. If there's one thing that separates theory from survival, it's lived experience. When you read forums, scroll Reddit threads, or dig through freeze-out stories, you start to realize survival isn't about the fanciest gear. It's about real humans making do with what's already around them. And some of these lessons are worth more than a whole shelf of prepper manuals. Take the Texas freeze of 2021. Millions of people suddenly without power discovered the hard way that trying to heat the whole house was a waste of precious energy. Families who tried to keep every room warm ended up cold and burned through fuel fast. The people who made it through comfortably, they picked one room, sealed it off, and let body heat do half the work. It's such a simple concept. Concentrate energy, don't dilute it, but it's the kind of hack you only learn from bitter experience. So if you ever face your own 72-day nightmare, remember this. Don't fight the cold across the entire battlefield. Pick your bunker and hold it. Up again and again in survival communities. Sure, we've talked about candles and reflectors, but here's a genius one. Headlamps. They free your hands for cooking, repairs, or just holding a blanket, and they're far more efficient than running a lantern in every room. On Reddit, countless preppers swear by strapping a headlamp around a water jug or milk carton, it transforms that single beam into a glowing orb of diffused light, bright enough to fill a space. Cheap, clever, and effective. These are the tricks that don't just save energy, they save sanity. But the most important lessons come from the mistakes people admit to. In every long blackout story, there's at least one family that dragged a BBQ grill indoors or lit a charcoal fire in their living room. And the result? Carbon monoxide poisoning, sometimes fatal. It's heartbreaking because in the panic of cold and dark, it feels like common sense to bring in any heat source. But survival requires discipline. If a device isn't designed for indoor use, don't gamble. No hack is worth your life. A warm room means nothing if you never wake up in it. So what do we take from these real-world survival tales? First, that community knowledge matters more than most people realize. The internet may be overflowing with opinions, myths, and flat-out bad advice, but buried inside those threads are the voices of people who have actually lived through the worst, and those voices carry lessons textbooks can't teach. Every freeze-out story, every blackout confession, every clever hack shared in desperation adds up to a survival guide written in real blood and sweat. Second, survival is rarely about heroics. Movies and TV shows glorify the lone wolf battling the elements with nothing but grit and fire. Reality is much less glamorous. True survival comes from restraint, patience, and careful choices, doing less, conserving energy, and avoiding the temptation to overcomplicate things. Sometimes the smartest move is not building a roaring fire or running every lamp you own, but quietly sitting under layers with your family in a sealed room, letting body heat and time do the work. And third, maybe most importantly, mistakes kill faster than the cold itself. People don't freeze because they lacked courage. They die because they gambled on unsafe shortcuts. Every hack, no matter how clever it seems, must be weighed not just on how well it works, but on how safely it works over days or weeks. One bad decision, like bringing a BBQ indoors or blocking a vent, can undo every good decision you've made before. That's why the hardest lesson, hammered again and again across Reddit threads and survival forums, is simple but brutal. Don't romanticize survival. There are no medals for style points, no trophies for making it look dramatic. Strip it down to what matters. Don't be clever. Be alive. Just survive. Reminder, here's the reality check again. 72 days without heat or light isn't a prepper fantasy. It's already happened. People have lived through it, people have died through it, and the difference wasn't luck, it was preparation. The first night won't break you. The first week probably won't either, but by week 3, when the cold seeps into your bones and the dark starts eating at your head, that's when the real test begins. If you don't have systems in place before disaster hits, you won't have time to build them after. That's the brutal truth. Survival isn't about scrambling when the lights go out, it's about stacking the deck today. So when tomorrow comes, you don't panic, you just execute. So if you've taken anything from this breakdown, let it be urgency, not fear, urgency. And here's where I leave you with the challenge. If the blackout hit tonight, what DIY heat hack would you trust to keep your family alive? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them, I learned from them, and so will thousands of others in this community. If you're serious about being ready, hit that like button, subscribe for more survival tools, and share this with someone you know who's not ready. The next 72 days are not a hypothetical. They're coming. The only question is, will you already be prepared?